Cassius M. Clay, who married little Dora Richardson, he told the following sensational story of his domestic up and downs. Ever since I obtained a divorce from my wife, who, together with her relatives, was prejudiced against me because of my anti-slavery work, there has been a steady and determined effort to prevent me from marrying again. When I brought home from Russia with me the child who was known as Lonnie Clay, I did not do like others have done, disown my own flesh and blood, but I had the child adopted and made him the equal of my other children as heir to this vast estate. You will understand that my father, Green Clay, who was a gallant soldier in the War of 1812, left this immense estate to me during my lifetime, but entailed to my children. I could have held my life interest in the estate until the day of my death, but I loved my children and divided the land equally among them, retaining only this house, which I built with my own money at the cost of nearly $100,000. In order to have an annuity sufficient for my wants, I charged the children a rental of $1 per acre per year. They lease it out at from $3 to $12 per acre. So you see, I am giving them the benefit of the land when it really belongs to me until death.
Wait, I thought this was about his marriage to the child.
I think he's just basically setting up, the fact that his children are horrible human beings because they're keeping him from marrying when he's been providing for them.
Okay.
I will go down. This recent trouble dates back 3 months. Up to that time, I had in my employ S.C. Moore and his wife, who were my overseer and housekeeper, respectively. They grew so arrogant that they seemed to think they owned the entire place and I was their servant. Of course, I could not stand that. They also circulated stories about...
Wait, are these slaves that he's talking about?
Well, they would have been servants by then.
What year is this?
This is 1870.
Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry, 1894.
Okay.
They also circulated stories about me that I was debauching Mary Lee Bowling, a young woman who was assisting in the housework, and Dora. There never was a baser lie concocted under heaven. As God is my judge, I never had any carnal thought in connection with that child, Dora.
Wait, but he married her.
Right. Well, they succeeded in inducing Mary to leave, and they married her to some young fellow. They then tried to poison the mind of Dora against me, but in this they significantly failed. Realizing what they were trying to do to me, I drove them off my place, but they were not to be so easily disposed of. They recruited a band of about 30 men among their friends to mob me, but when they found that I was on guard, prepared to shoot to kill, they very sensibly left and have never been back on a similar mission. I had my cannon loaded, and had they attacked the house...
Of course he did.
There certainly would have been several funerals among them.
Nice.
So, as you can see, there was quite a bit of a hubbub over his marriage to Dora Richardson. Cash claimed in the end that he was merely putting his money where his mouth was, since his status as an ardent abolitionist had been questioned in recent years. He thought that marrying the sister of one of his tenant farmers would prove that he was decidedly egalitarian. I did see one notation indicating that Dora was a mulatto, and if you look at her photograph, some of her facial features do seem to verify that report. According to the marriage records for the county, the couple was married on November 13th, 1894. Apparently, old Cash, had found someone to conduct the ceremony. And I believe that what he refers to in the newspaper article as the mob that came out for him was the result of the local sheriff, who was told by a local judge that they needed to go out and free this girl. They felt like she had been forced to marry Cash. So when Cash confronted them, he claimed that Dora had married him willingly, and this report was corroborated.
I don't feel like a 15-year-old marries anyone willingly. I mean, it's all forced. It's all forced. It's if you're a child, you've been forced into that.
Age of consent was probably 13.
Right, but if you're... Okay, but it still stands that if you're a child, you're not making a decision from...
Maybe.
Intelligence or life experience or really anything.
I mean, my great-grandmother married my great-grandfather when she was 14.
Right, but was she 14 and he was 90?
No.
Correct. So that's my point. Like, you're not...
Okay. Marry an old man is what you're saying.
I guess, yeah.
But then again, she's a poor daughter of a tenant farmer, and there's the rich guy, and, he's offering to marry you, and, hey, I could go live in the big house. And,
and you don't know anything about anything.
Right.
So, okay.
Yeah. So this is the report of the incident that the sheriff wrote to the judge, who, swore them to go and stop the wedding, essentially. Mm-hmm. The letter was dated November 14th, 1894, from Richmond, Kentucky, to Judge John G. Chenot, Chenot or Chenot. I don't know how it looks like a French name. And I know from experience that even though it's a French name, they don't pronounce it that way in Kentucky.
Right.
It's Versailles and not Versailles. You know.
Mm-hmm.
So, dear Judge, I am reporting about the posse like you said I had to. Judge, we went out to Whitehall, but we didn't do no good. It was a mistake to go out there with only 7 men. Judge, the old general was awful mad. He got to cussing and shooting, and we had to shoot back. The old general sure did object to being arrested. Don't let nobody tell you he didn't. And we had to shoot. I thought we hit him 2 or 3 times, but I guess we didn't, because he didn't act like it. He come out right good, considering. I'm having some misery from 2 splinters of wood in my side. Dick Collier was hurt a little when his shirt tail and breeches were shot off by a piece of horseshoe and nails that come out of that old cannon. Have you seen Jack? He wrenched his neck and shoulder when his horse throwed him as we were getting away. Judge, I think you'll have to go to Frankfort to see Brown. Parentheses, this is John Young Brown, who was the governor of Kentucky at the time. If he could send Captain Longmire up here with 2 light fielders, which are field pieces, cannons, he could divide his men and send some with the cannon around to the front of the house, but not too close, and the others around through the cornfield and up around the cabins and the spring house to the back porch. I think this might do it. Respectively, Josiah P. Simmons, High Sheriff. So we're going to try to, arrest a guy from marrying a girl and bring out the local guard with 2 cannons, and just seems like
it's a lot of effort.
A lot of effort, yeah, agreed. In the end, Cash and Dora were only married for 2 years. Rumors abounded that she ran away several times, both from Whitehall and the finishing school that Cash enrolled her in. The truth appears that she suffered from depression, and she did return home to her brother's house on several occasions. Cash finally threw in the towel in 1897 and granted a divorce to Dora. As alimony, he bought her Pinkard farm and outfitted the house with furniture taken from Whitehall.
Oh.
So, speaking of Whitehall, do you want to tell us a little bit about the house as it now? I mean,
right. I do. And just to reiterate that it was called Clermont originally. It was born around the turn of the 19th century, and it was a Georgian house. So Cash was born in Clermont in 1810 and inherited it when Green Clay died in 1828. So like our figures, our womanly or manly figures before and after the holidays, Clermont House started out significantly smaller than it ended up. Clermont House was a very modest Georgian 2-story house. When you look at it today, it's lovely, but it does not read architecturally as Georgian.
Nope, not at all.
It evolved into Whitehall in the 1860s when Cash went to Washington, then Russia, and all that happened, and the house exploded. So this is sort of running down the timeline of it. He lived in the mansion until he died in 2003. The house went up for auction. Cash's grandson, Warfield Bennett, bought it and rented it to tenant farmers who lived in the house until 1960, or the mid-1960s, rather. Then, sadly, the home was left vacant and open to vandalism. But this was not the case for long. So in 1968, the Bennett family donated the house to the state. The state of Kentucky had ownership, but then there were efforts from the first lady of the state, Beulah Nunn, who was then the wife of Louis B. Nunn. So at the time, Louis Nunn was the governor of the state of Kentucky. His wife, Beulah, was the one that made the effort to restore Whitehall. The mansion was restored and opened to the public in September of 71. Whitehall, as we call it now, it's no longer Clermont House. One of the facades, like the main facade that you see in pictures if you look up Whitehall, has a 3-story tall and narrow central bay with a 1-story columned portico. The house is symmetrical on the primary facade, or what is now the primary facade, and its flanking wings are 2.5 stories. The first floor windows reach nearly to the floor, so low sill heights, and they have square heads. The second floor windows are equally tall and narrow and have arched heads. So this is an Italianate makeover of a Georgian house. The third floor has small rectangular windows. It's a brick house. The primary facade has projections and indentations that emphasize the verticality of its composition. The windows are equally spaced between slightly projecting full-height brick pilasters. Large brackets, again Italianate in nature, were added at the eaves, centered on each of these brick projections. In addition to the brackets are a series of decorative pendants that follow the trim under the eaves. So what is now the primary facade was the Italianated addition to the Georgian house, and this facade is at a 90-degree angle to where you would have originally entered into the Georgian house. And when they added it on, it wasn't completely encapsulated. So like one side, you can see that there's sort of a remnant of this old Georgian house, and then the Italianate was just sort of tacked onto it. So it was it was weird. Claremont House was not completely encapsulated by additions, even if the aesthetic of the entire house was altered. So the whole thing now looks Italianate, but in plan, you can definitely tell that it's two houses that have become one.
Well, yeah, because if you look at the side, you can kind of tell.
Exactly.
Okay.
So the addition covered the entire east end and nearly all the north side. The result is a house of multiple periods with some awkward circulation, dark interior rooms, and unexpected plan layouts. It is interesting to study the before and after floor plan because, like you say, you can still see the footprint of the old Claremont in relation to Whitehall expansion. Ultimately, the evolution in style was achieved through application of exterior details and not really a sensitive reimagining of the entire residence and interior space.
And now for something not so scandalous.
Stay tuned for more scandal sheets after the break. And now, back to the show.
I don't think the odd evolution of Claremont to Whitehall should be used to measure the talent of its architect. Thomas Lewinsky was famous for his command of the Greek Revival style, which, it should be noted, Whitehall is not. He is known for having made the third most significant contribution to Kentucky architecture behind architect Gideon Shyrock and builder John McMurtry. Shyrock was the state's first trained architect, under whom McMurtry apprenticed. Lewinsky became Shyrock's rival just as the latter's popularity was growing. Lewinsky came to Lexington in 1842 at age 40 after having taught French at the University of Louisville. His early years were spent in England after being born in London to a Polish father and an English mother. He was certainly not destined for design and became an architect in a rather roundabout way. His intended profession of Roman Catholic priest did not suit his adventurous personality, and he enlisted in the British Army. He fought in Spain and crossed the ocean to fight in South America, where he lost an eye. I'm guessing he was discharged, made his way north to teach, and ended up meeting a young lady. After burying their first and only child, the marriage did not last. It was with his second wife that he was connected to his future client, Henry Clay. Henry Clay, not Cash, since Lewinsky's new bride was Clay's niece. The 1840s, so sort of Greek Revival, like pre-Victorian, were the most successful decade for the architect, who also spoke French fluently and taught the language to area residents. So this is post-teaching at the university. He moved and is teaching other people or being a tutor in French. He was also the secretary of the Lexington Gas Company in the years leading up to the Civil War. An advertisement for Lewinsky, dated February 14th, Valentine's Day, 1846, reads, T. Lewinsky, architect, will be pleased to make such drawings, specifications, and C, etc., as are necessary for the construction of public edifices and private residences, mansions, or cottages, in the most complete and satisfactory manner that the citizens may favor him with. Lewinsky's office was located on Courthouse Square, occupying a portion of the second floor over the county clerk's office in a building flanking the courthouse. Not bad for an architect, but given his history and connections, it made sense that he would get a choice off-list location. In the late 1850s, Lewinsky was involved with yet another Clay family estate. He was hired to design Ashland 2.0, I'll explain that later, for Henry Clay's son, James. A little background about Henry. He was a leading figure in the first half of the 19th century. He was a senator, Speaker of the House, Secretary of State, and 3 times candidate for presidency. He lived at Ashland from 1811 until his death in 1852. The estate is surrounded today, this is Ashland, by 20 acres of historic grounds. Clay had hired the famous L'Enfant, who had laid out Washington, to plan his gardens, and Clay set out only native Kentucky plants and trees and shrubs. The original house was finished in 1811. The one-story wings were drawn up by Benjamin Latrobe, including a beautiful vaulted skylit library. Clay spent extravagantly on his 600-acre farm he called his Promised Land. For the house, he bought marble and silver and books of hand